Hello and welcome to The World Today, everyone. I'm Richard Nta in Nairobi. Let's begin with our top story. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has met with Jordanian Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi in Beijing. Safadi is accompanying King Abdullah II on his state visit to China. Wang says the king's visit will be a complete success. He says China appreciates Jordan's firm commitment to a friendly policy towards China and its adherence to the One China principle. China will continue to support Jordan in safeguarding its independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. Safadi said Jordan attaches great importance to its relations with China and is willing to deepen cooperation in various fields. Wang Yi said Jordan is an important country in the Middle East. China will continue supporting Jordan in playing a positive role on the Palestinian question and other regional issues. Safadi acknowledged China's positive and responsible role on Middle East issues, especially its firm support for the two-state solution. President Masoud Pezeshkian says Iran is now in an all-out economic, military, and security war with its enemies. This follows Washington's threat of its most crushing economic operation yet on Iran. Iran's top security official, Mohsen Rezai, says Tehran will not allow a single drop of oil to be exported through the Strait of Hormuz or from anywhere in the Persian Gulf if the economic war continues. Sebar Saremi has more from Tehran.
Politically, as you mentioned, Iran's chief security official, Mohsen Rezai, and also who is a former IRGC commander and now Secretary of Supreme Council of National Security, in a very important televised interview said that those states joining U.S. sanctions against Iran will be considered an enemy and Tehran will target the interests in retaliation. Rezai has vowed to neutralize the economic war with the United States. He also mentioned that Americans have betrayed negotiations and diplomacy. Now we can safely say that diplomacy has hit a wall between Iran and the U.S. On the other side, President Masoud Pezeshkian defended the memorandum of understanding and also he acknowledged the economic challenges Iran is facing. He also went on to say that the best way for the country to move beyond what he described as a situation of neither war nor peace.
Not only did Iran not become Venezuela, but it became a power that the world was amazed by its solidarity and unit. We are in a full-scale economic, military, and security war. Trump easily says that he is imposing the most crushing and terrifying sanctions on Iran. We, however, are standing firm. We are trying to be a servant of our people in the face of this unequal war.
Economically speaking, I have to tell you that Iran is facing an unprecedented crisis. Rial, our national currency, is on a free fall. It's just going down. Gold prices are just soaring. Something we've never seen that happened this fast. For example, you wake up in the morning, you check the prices, and you see after 2 hours the prices have gone up. So this is an unprecedented crisis that Iran is facing. Inflation, unemployment, and also the currency, the devaluation of the rial are happening at the same time. Diplomatically, I have to tell you that Field Marshal Asim Munir's plan to visit the official from Pakistan is reported to be planning to visit Iran in coming days. There are some reports indicating that he's planning to mediate again between Iran and U.S. to might kickstart negotiations between the two countries. This is all going on in Iran economically, politically, and diplomatically for now. We have to see what will happen in near future.
Iran's Foreign Minister Saeed Abbas Araghchi has dismissed the latest U.S. sanctions and military threats as desperation and recycled bullying from past administrations. He says Iran knows the playbook and how to respond. Araghchi urged Washington to abandon its plans, adding Iran will only pursue dialogue based on justice and dignity.
This is a repetitive scenario, from the crippling sanctions imposed during the Obama administration to the maximum pressure campaign during Mr. Trump's first administration, and now to the latest sanctions. All of these measures have been introduced under different titles, but they represent the same kind of bullying that we have always seen in American policy. The fact that the United States has once again moved from military threats, saying that it will strike and so on, to reviving its old plans shows that they are truly desperate and have no solution.
Araghchi says Washington's threats aim to divert the attention of Americans from U.S. financial problems. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is expected to announce the new sanctions against Tehran on Monday. He says the goal is to squash Iran's economy and collapse its regime. Israel's illegal E1 settlement plan in occupied Palestine's West Bank has drawn condemnation from 15 major Western and Arab and Muslim nations and concern from the United Nations. They warn Israel's new plan will undermine the two-state solution. A Palestinian official and a Jerusalem-based journalist say this effectively divides the West Bank.
First, the E1 project is one of the most dangerous settlement projects in the Palestinian territories. The plan was first submitted for approval in the early 1990s, so we are talking about more than 3 decades during which it remained shelved and was politically regarded as one of the red lines concerning the two-state solution. Last year, the Israeli government approved this plan, crossing what had long been considered a red line surrounding such settlement projects. What has happened now is that the Israeli government has moved from the planning stage to the implementation stage by issuing a series of tenders related to the construction of more than 1,200 settlement units in this area. The danger of this plan is that it goes beyond residential construction or infrastructure. It has a profound geopolitical impact on the Palestinian territories, effectively separating the northern West Bank from the southern West Bank. Second, this plan effectively condemns 18 Palestinian Bedouin communities located east of Jerusalem to destruction. Third, this plan can only be viewed as part of the so-called Greater Jerusalem Plan.
This is clear evidence and effectively the final announcement that the prospect of a geographically contiguous Palestinian state is being brought to an end. Israeli measures have moved from hints and threats to eliminate the prospect of a Palestinian state to actually creating that reality on the ground. This is what the Israeli government itself is saying, that what is now happening east and southeast of Jerusalem is a dream they have been waiting 20 years to realize. It eliminates all prospects for peace in the region.
Russia says its air defense systems have intercepted and destroyed 351 Ukrainian drones over multiple regions overnight. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Ukraine has targeted Russian civilian and logistics infrastructure over the past 40 days. Putin says Russia is stepping up military pressure and is confident it will achieve its goals. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country will not seek alternatives to joining NATO. He says the NATO membership will open up opportunities for Ukraine for funding and arms cooperation. He says Kyiv still needs 30 billion euros in loans from the European Union this year to cover its fiscal deficit, while also facing a $27 billion shortfall in its defense budget. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says holding elections is impossible under the country's current conditions after his former defense minister Mikhail Fedorov called for a wartime vote. Fedorov recently spoke out, calling for Ukraine to find a legal and safe way to hold elections during the conflict. It's his most direct challenge yet to President Zelensky after he was dismissed last month. Zelensky says elections would be a tsunami for the country that would tear apart Ukraine. He says Ukraine would be ready to discuss holding possible elections only if partners provide specific guarantees that the vote could be held safely, legitimately, and democratically. A presidential election was expected to be held in 2024, but was postponed due to the country's martial law, which has been in effect since the escalation of the Ukraine crisis. Search and rescue operations continue in Guinea's capital, Conakry, after Sunday's landfill collapse that has claimed 30 lives. Officials said the landslide was triggered by heavy rainfall, crushing nearby homes and land trapping many victims. More than 20 people have been rescued, including 6 who were seriously injured, and that's according to the latest government situation report. We'll be bringing you more details on this story in Africa Live. And President Donald Trump has hit back at Canada after the country announced retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods following a breakdown in trade negotiations. The Trump administration has warned of a devastating impact on its neighbor, and Jaguti Dave reports from Washington. Let's take a listen.
Well, in an early Truth Social post, Donald Trump said that Canada wants the benefits of being a state without being one. They have also charged our grape farmers for many years massive amounts of tariffs, no more. The Canada comment in particular, I guess, is reflecting on comments he's made previously. He's talked about adding Canada as the US's 51st state, obviously an idea that Canada's premiers have pushed back against. Donald Trump has also made comments about Mark Carney and his predecessor Justin Trudeau being future governors of Canada. And these jibes come after Mark Carney said Canada would match US tariffs dollar for dollar after those crucial trade talks fell through. The US trade representative is saying that Canada declined the deal even though it was in their favour. Canada was saying unfair last-minute changes meant that they could not accept. So now we're seeing fears of a full-on trade war between these two neighbours, putting into question the US-Mexico-Canada trade pact as well. Canadian officials have in the past mooted this as a suggestion. Let's cut off energy to the US in retaliation for tariffs, they've said. Now, this could have huge consequences because Canada is the US's largest foreign energy supplier. It provides more than 60% of the US's crude oil imports, nearly all of its imported natural gas, and more than 80% of its imported electricity. So this shows how integrated the two countries' power grids and refinery chains are, and this could cause any threat to cut off, if that is followed through, that could have huge consequences. You could see unreliable electricity in areas of the northeast of the United States, or the Midwest, where there's a reliance on electricity. You don't really have an alternative for the Canadian crude in the same way, like Venezuelan and Mexican crude, for example, is a bit different. So the refining process is different. You could also see differences in price pressures in states that are reliant on Canadian crude and electricity. So these are just some of the implications that could happen. Now, it's questionable as to whether the US would whether Canada would follow through on something like that, and as an escalation. But it just shows the language that's being used. It just shows how serious this situation is.
Well, that is it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thanks for watching. Witnesses recount their horror as a landfill collapse in Guinea kills at least 30 people. Kenya arrests 4 suspects over the recent death of up to 18 elephants at a national park. And after over 3 years of civil war in Sudan, nightlife is slowly picking up in the capital, Khartoum. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. Coming up in business, Africa's largest mobile operator reports a significant rise in adjusted profits during the first half of this year. And in sports, Ethiopia's Yomith Kejelcha reclaims the half-marathon world record in Buenos Aires. Once again, a very warm welcome to Africa Live. We begin in Guinea, where rescue teams are still combing the site of a landfill collapse that has claimed dozens of lives. Officials say the Dar es Salaam dump site, the biggest in the capital, Conakry, was already slated for closure before the tragedy occurred. CGTN's David Nta with that report.
The search and rescue effort continued on Sunday after heavy rains triggered a landfill collapse in the Dar es Salaam neighborhood of Guinea's capital, Conakry. Witnesses say the towering heap of rubbish collapsed onto nearby homes a few hours before dawn on Sunday, and then a second wave trapped a team of locals who had mobilized to rescue some of the first victims.
At around 3 a.m., 2 a.m., we heard something sliding, a scream outside. Everyone was shouting. I called to my wife. We can't stay in the house. People are screaming outside. Let's go out. When we stepped outside, not even 2 or 3 minutes had passed. When the young people mobilized to go over there was a second landslide then. All the people who went there to help ended up being buried themselves.
The tragedy is all the worse because the government had actually planned to decommission the landfill. Guinea's Minister of Territorial Administration announced plans on Thursday to close the site because of the danger it posed, especially during the ongoing rainy season, and said the waste was to be relocated outside Conakry. The closure was slated for Sunday, but enforcement came several hours late for many of the victims. One woman told local media that her 5 children had died in the disaster, with officials still reviewing the deaths and injuries.
There are around 30 dead. The bodies have been taken to Donka National Hospital, and we now have 22 injured. Early in the morning, the government mobilized all government agencies, civil society and the Red Cross to search for people under the rubble. What we must be thankful for is that civil protection, together with our other services, with the support of the government. We found many people under the rubble, bringing out 22 people who were truly injured. Some were seriously injured, others were slightly injured. This is what is important, but the search continues for other bodies.
The government says it will ensure that remaining families are relocated elsewhere as the nation strives to draw lessons from this tragedy. David Nta, CGTN.
4 suspects have been arrested as authorities investigate the deaths of 18 elephants in Kenya's Amboseli ecosystem. 15 deaths were recorded between June the 24th and July the 24th, with 3 more reported last week. Preliminary laboratory findings point to the possible involvement of a toxic substance, with earlier indications suggesting cyanide poisoning from pesticide-contaminated tomatoes. However, authorities stress the findings are not yet conclusive. The Kenya Wildlife Service and other agencies are continuing field investigations, laboratory tests, and environmental sampling, while more suspects are being sought. Health ministers from 47 African countries converge in Addis Ababa for the 76th WHO Regional Committee for Africa. The 3-day meeting begins tomorrow. Organizers say the focus will largely be on how to achieve sustainable health financing as donor assistance declines and governments face growing pressure on their budgets. The summit's resolutions are expected to have an impact on millions of lives. CGTN's Robert Nagila has more.
From staff shortages and medicine shortages to inadequate infrastructure, Africa's health systems are struggling to provide quality care. At an African Union meeting on healthcare financing in Ghana in July, The World Health Organization chief warned that declining funding could reverse progress against major diseases.
Africa still carries the heaviest burden, and as external funding declines, we risk losing ground.
The WHO says international funding for healthcare in Africa fell sharply in 2025 by at least 30% compared to 2023. As health ministers from across Africa meet in Ethiopia's capital for the WHO Regional Committee for Africa, sustainable health financing is high on the agenda. One of the biggest challenges facing African governments is how to finance social spending while dealing with fiscal pressures, including debt servicing, which consumes a significant amount of government revenue. Health experts say governments can do more to expand the resources available.
Increasing taxes may not really be the way to go. What we want to see happen is that the tax net should be broadened so that more people are captured within the tax net.
He says expanding health insurance coverage could also increase the pool of people contributing to healthcare financing. But raising more money is only part of the equation. How that money is spent matters just as much.
Health system finance framework has to be efficient. You have to build clear pathways where you connect the money budgeted to actual health intervention so that you don't spend all your money on technical papers when you should be spending it on medications, logistics, delivery, human resource provision, and training and infrastructure upgrade, for example.
The Addis Ababa meeting is expected to consider a WHO strategy aimed at providing what the organization describes as a clear and actionable pathway to transform health financing across the continent. The goal? To build health systems that are better funded, more accountable, and ultimately better able to deliver universal health care. Bob Nagila, CGTN.
And now to Sudan, where the more than 3-year conflict between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces continues. The army said on Sunday that its forces and some regional allies had destroyed an RSF convoy in the northern desert near the Libya border, seizing vehicles and drones. The allies include Darfur armed groups and other militias. They say the attack was part of efforts to dismantle supply lines smuggling weapons and fuel from Libya. The joint force says 49 combat vehicles were destroyed, while 30 other vehicles and a fuel tanker were captured. It also said as many as 70 RSF fighters were detained. However, these claims could not be independently verified. Well, after more than 3 years of war, parts of Khartoum are slowly coming back to life after dark. Restaurants, tea stalls, and small businesses are staying open later as residences cautiously return to public spaces. But the revival is fragile, with security, power, and economic challenges still affecting daily life. Naba Muaddin reports from Khartoum.
As the sun goes down, another side of Khartoum begins to emerge. In a city once emptied by war, parks, restaurants, and small businesses are welcoming customers back again. This is Marina Park, near the confluence of the Blue and White Nile. The area was one of the main battlefields last year.
We spent 5 months clearing the location of war remnants, including dead bodies, weapons, damaged cars, and ordnance. We now operate as the first park in the capital, despite the financial and logistical challenges. Families and children deserve to reclaim their nights and deserve a place to relax.
For businesses, the return of customers offers a chance to rebuild livelihoods badly affected by the war. But keeping the doors open after dark is not easy. Power remains unreliable, security concerns persist, and damaged infrastructure are among the problems.
When we started 7 months ago, we received a few customers and we closed by 9 p.m. But now, the change is felt daily. The number of customers is growing, and we open until 12 now. I am happy and surprised by the return of both people and nightlife.
For customers, hanging out at night means more than eating or socializing. It's a chance to feel normal again. A meal with friends, a cup of tea, or simply spending an evening outside can feel like a return to normal life.
I regularly come with my children to let them play, to restore our memories and feel alive again. During the war, we couldn't be outside our house during the daylight, but now everything's changed, and I'm so cheerful.
Khartoum's nightlife revival is still limited and uneven, but every gathering is a small sign of resilience.
For many years, these streets were quiet after dark. Now Khartoum is slowly coming back to life. But ensuring this revival lasts will depend on security, reliable services, and a functioning economy. Naba Muhyiddin, CGTN, Khartoum, Sudan.
In Mali, at least 20 soldiers held by Tuareg separatist rebels have been released. This is according to security sources. Some of the soldiers had been in captivity for over 3 years, while others had been captured in recent attacks across the country. The exchange on Sunday is part of the nation's initiative seeking to ease tensions between the ruling junta and northern rebel forces. Similar releases across the country have been executed over the past 10 days. Mali has been battling jihadists and separatist insurgents for more than a decade, and thousands have been killed or displaced. Time now for a short break. We shall reset with more Africa Live. Stay with us. Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. Guinea has formally asked France to return the remains and belongings of historical figures who resisted French colonization. The appeal follows recent efforts by Paris to return colonial-era artifacts to several former African colonies. Guinea has established scientific committees in Conakry to document the origins and historical context of each item, some of which date back to the late 19th century. CGTN Sophia Shimatero reports.
Guinean Culture Ministry says the repatriation initiative is born out of the desire to recognize and appreciate the nation's cultural heritage.
We do not wish to act out of resentment. We want to ensure that this painful past is healed and that this becomes rather a time of unity and rehabilitation of these heroes, a time when we restore their dignity and honor of who they were.
Among the items requested include the skulls of Bokar Biru Bari, the last leader of the kingdom of Futa Jalon, along with those of his son, brother and war chief. They were beheaded in 1896 following a battle against the French. Guinea is also requesting the return of manuscripts and other objects belonging to Samori Toure, a warrior preacher. According to historians, this was long overdue.
The skull in question dates from 1896, and it was only in 2026 that the request for restitution was made. Can you imagine how long it took? This lapse of time marked the consciences and aroused dreams among the Guineans, because they did not forget the circumstances in which Almami Bokar Biro was defeated, nor those in which this head was removed and taken to France.
Many Guineans are supporting the move. They say even to this day, the former colonizers are using these artifacts to degrade Africa and its people.
In a sense, this is a continuation of the dehumanization that the colonizers inflicted on Africans and particularly on Guineans. Displaying skulls in museums across Europe is equal to displaying war trophies, and yet these are important figures. If after this crime, France still holds the remains and property of these people, I believe it is perfectly legitimate for the Guinean authorities to request their repatriation to their homeland.
The West African nation seeks to hold national funerals so as to give a proper burial to the remains of its heroes, and also plans to display the recovered historical artifacts at the National Museum of Conakry. Sophia Shimichero, CGTN.
Meanwhile, Kenya plans to import up to 2 million tons of white maize after drought hit much of the country's vast maize growing belt in the North Rift Valley. As CGTN's Enoch Sokolia reports, it could be a sign of things to come.
From the face of it, it looks like farmers from this part of Kenya are going to have a bumper harvest. Endless fields of green maize dot the landscape, painting a picture of abundance. But when you zoom in, there is nothing. The cobs are empty. The harvest that farmers waited months for never came. For generations, Kenya's North Rift Valley has been known as the nation's breadbasket. It is here, across the vast plains of Uasin Gishu and Trans Nzoia counties, that millions of bags of maize are produced every year. But this season, the landscape tells a different story. Hey brother, what really happened here?
What happened here, it is about drought, and this is about famine. The rain was not enough.
Months of failed rains have left behind a silent disaster.
I have nothing from my farm. It is zero, that is loss, a big loss in my pocket.
The consequences extend far beyond these farms. The Rift Valley historically produces more than 40% of Kenya's maize supply. When the breadbasket suffers, the entire nation feels the pain. What makes this crisis particularly alarming is that many farmers didn't realize the extent of the damage until it was too late. The maize plants germinated, they grew, and from a distance, they looked okay. But the prolonged dry spell struck at the critical stage of development, preventing the grain from properly forming inside the cobs. This one doesn't have anything.
Yeah. Now, if you can look at this, if you can look at this maize, again, look at the size.
The size itself is
again, you know, this
normally
6, but now in a good harvest, almost 3 times. Let's say up to this size.
Up to this size. Yes. And it's now here.
And this again, to make the matters worse, if you can
open inside.
Yes, if you can peel of it.
There's nothing.
There's nothing.
At least you have something.
No, but you see, again, if you see, there's a lot of spaces here. Look at the space, and then look at the size of the grain.
But this one is empty, totally. There's nothing.
Sure.
You can see, this is an empty corpse.
So it is actually pathetic because in a good now look at this. You know, there's a lot of space. You see, and so this can be the best day of harvest, which is actually opposite of what we've been harvesting over in these particular years.
And you see, you can also see it's actually infested.
Now again, you know, this is like when there is no rain.
For thousands of farming families like Kiptalam, the losses are measured not only in money but also in hope. Many invested heavily in seeds, fertilizer, labor and machinery. Now they are left counting losses. Driving through Kenya's North Rift region, the scale of this crisis becomes impossible to ignore. Kilometer after kilometer, field after field. It's clear farmers are confronting the same reality. What should have been the most productive season has become a season of uncertainty, threatening both national food security and rural livelihoods. Kenya Seed Company Managing Director says the crisis is creating a dangerous chain reaction.
And we've seen that we are going to have a challenge next year as far as food is concerned, especially the commercial farmers, the people who produce food.
Have you ever seen something like this?
This is very, very, very challenging in my experience. And as a government officer, I have seen it, we've not seen drought of this magnitude before, affecting directly farmers.
To make the matters worse, alternative crops like millet that have a certain tolerance for drought have also done poorly.
If you see this millet, as far as they are up to this place, it is just the rain that they got when they germinated. They have survived up to this time without rain.
A poor harvest in the Rift Valley often translates into higher food prices across the nation. Experts warn that increasingly erratic weather patterns are making farming more unpredictable. For communities whose livelihoods depend on the rains, every failed season depends vulnerability. Enoxikoria, CGTN.
A bit of news from the world of money now, and it's time for our business segment. Here are the headlines. Coming up in business, Africa's largest mobile operator reports a significant rise in adjusted profit during the first half of this year. And Tanzania launches the country's largest hydropower plant. Welcome into our business segment. South African mobile operator MTN Group has reported a 21.3% increase in the half-year adjusted profit. Its expansion was largely driven by a combination of subscriber growth that accelerated in the second quarter and double-digit growth in service revenue. Africa's biggest telecom operator said its adjusted headline earnings per share rose to 793 cents in the period. Reported headline earnings per share declined by 5.8% due to a non-cash impairment of its 49% stake in Irancell amid the Iran conflict and foreign exchange losses in South Sudan. Group service revenue excluded the effect of currency fluctuations, which grew to 17.5% to $7.21 billion. South Africa's president has called for a reassessment of his country's trade agreements with neighbor Zimbabwe. Cyril Ramaphosa was speaking alongside his counterpart Emmerson Mnangagwa at the opening of the fourth session of the South Africa-Zimbabwe Binational Commission in Pretoria. He said it would give both countries the means to create employment and economic opportunities. CGTN's Ulysses Jamela has more.
The Commission serves as the central mechanism for managing and advancing a strategic partnership between the two Southern African neighbors. South Africa and Zimbabwe already enjoy strong commercial ties. South African exports to Zimbabwe were valued at just over $4 billion in 2025, and that's according to the South African presidency. The forum brought government and business together to translate political commitments into practical trade and investment opportunities. Officials evaluated progress on over 33 existing pacts and MOUs that concern economic development and cross-border transport.
Today, we have adopted important decisions and witnessed the signing of several legal instruments in various fields of cooperation. We must now translate these commitments into tangible outcomes through concrete actions that deliver meaningful benefits for our countries and our people.
Ramaphosa noted that bilateral trade had almost doubled over the past 4 years and that there were plenty of opportunities.
Inclusive economic growth will give us the means to widen access to food, to shelter, to health, education, water, and sanitation for our people. It will give us the means to create employment and economic opportunities. The political will we have demonstrated today should encourage companies, our partners from both countries, to invest with great enthusiasm.
Meanwhile, Mnangagwa reiterated that his country is open for business.
Zimbabwe is committed to remove all the tariff and non-tariff barriers to trade. We are also ready to resolve the challenges faced by South African entities operating in Zimbabwe. Our mantra, Zimbabwe is open for business, reflects our commitment to improve both the ease of doing business as well as forge cross-border investment partnerships.
The gathering also comes as Southern Africa intensifies efforts to strengthen regional integration, industrialization, and value chains, and at a time of heightened tension around migration in South Africa, with xenophobic violence and migrant deportations affecting thousands of foreign nationals in recent months, including Zimbabweans. Both leaders concluded by emphasizing the deeper social connections that unite the countries beyond commerce. They also agreed to utilize the African Continental Free Trade Area to increase trade. Yolisa Njamala for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Tanzania has officially opened its largest hydropower station, a major milestone that could transform the country into a regional energy hub. The $3 billion Julius Nyerere hydropower project is expected to double the nation's power capacity, cut electricity bills, and eliminate frequent blackouts. CGTN's Daniel Arap-Moy reports.
Located on the Rufiji River, this massive project stands 137 meters high and stretches over a kilometer long. With 9 turbine units coming online, the station generates over 2,000 megawatts of power. Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan officially commissioned the facility, marking what leaders call a new era for the nation's economy.
This project provides nearly half of our country's power. It will help end the frequent blackouts that hurt our factories, businesses and hospitals. With the surplus electricity, we can boost trade, attract investments, create jobs and grow our economy.
The plant is expected to cut average power bills by 30% and turn the country to an energy importer into an exporter. Analysts estimate it could boost GDP growth by 4%. The Chinese company called China Power played a key role in building the dam and installing its heavy equipment using advanced concrete technology to speed up construction.
We adopted an integrated energy dissipation technology, combining wide steel piers, stepped spillways and steeling basins. We also applied high-volume fly ash roller-compacted concrete construction technology using continuous layer-by-layer placement of roller-compacted concrete. The maximum height of a single continuous concrete pour was 41.2 meters, which accelerated the construction process while improving construction quality.
With clean, reliable energy now flowing to the national grid, Tanzania is taking a giant leap toward industrialization and energy independence. Daniel Arap-Moy, CGTN.
And now moving on to the EV market. Chinese-made electric cars are in high demand in Tijuana near Mexico's border with the United States. But crossing into California, these cars become barely noticeable. Alistair Beverstock reports on how a single border is producing two very different car markets.
Tijuana in northwest Mexico, where the wait in line to drive across the US border can last for hours. But more recently, there are lines forming at a different location, the EV charger.
Charging can be a bit of a struggle. There are 2 chargers and about 6 cars waiting already.
The boom in EV sales in Mexico has been brisk, with sales growing more than 40% through the first half of this year compared to the same period in 2025, with Chinese companies representing a large proportion. On this side of the US-Mexico border, Chinese-made electric cars are everywhere, now accounting for roughly 7 out of every 10 EV sales nationwide. But on the other side, in California, they are scarce. A 100% US tariff effectively keeps them out. That means buyers here in Tijuana have access to newer, cheaper electric cars, unavailable to their American neighbors. BYD's most accessible model here, the Dolphin Mini EV, costs around $21,000. That's between $2,000 to $2,500 cheaper than its nearest competitor. Antonio Lopez works at one of this border city's 3 BYD dealerships and says a large proportion of his customers come from north of the border.
To buy a car here, you must be a Mexican citizen or legal resident. And many Americans with dual nationality come here, buy their car, register it in Mexico, and use it to cross the border.
That's what Pablo Acevedo is doing.
They should have these agencies over there. Gas is very expensive right now, and electric cars in the U.S. cost nearly double.
For Uber drivers in Tijuana like Sergio Mata, the purchase of his first electric car has boosted his own earnings.
I had a gasoline car which would cost $50 to cover the same distance that this one does on a $10 charge.
On this side of the border, cheaper access to electric vehicles is doing more than just saving consumers money. It's accelerating Mexico's own shift towards green mobility. Alastair Baverstock, CGTN, Tijuana, Mexico.
As China's A-share market enters the peak window for interim reporting, investors are closely watching how key sectors performed in the first half of the year. Among them, the star market. China's tech-focused board has stood out with strong revenue growth and robust profitability. Xiao Yutong has more.
The star market is delivering a strong performance this interim reporting season, with the total revenue of companies that have released their half-year results growing by around 30% year-on-year, and more than half of the companies posting net profits. Analysts attribute the broad-based strength to a tech sector upturn, as AI-driven computing demand ripples upstream through memory chips, printed circuit boards, and other key components. Biotech also outperformed, with several innovative drug makers beating expectations. The earnings underscore a virtuous cycle linking technological advancement, industrial upgrading, and capital flows. The momentum aligns with policy signals from Wu Qing, chairman of China's top securities regulator, who pledged at the 2026 Lujiazui Forum in June to support hard tech companies in quantum technology, biomanufacturing, embodied AI, and other sectors to list on the star market.
More funds are attracted to invest in hard tech and AI-related sectors. Monetary, fiscal, industrial, and capital market regulatory policies are converging to channel more funds into hard tech and AI sectors, reinforcing China's push for technological self-reliance.
Foreign investors are also paying close attention to China's hard tech sectors.
Investors increasingly recognize that China is not only a consumer of AI technology, but also a significant innovator across areas such as AI models, cloud infrastructure, semiconductors, and intelligent manufacturing.
With strong earnings, sustained policy backing, and rising investor interest, China's hard tech sectors are proving that the innovation-driven growth is more than a narrative. Zhao Shetong, CGTN.
Welcome into Sport on Africa Live with me, Richard Nta. Let's begin with athletics, where Ethiopia's Yomith Kejelcha has taken back the men's half marathon world record. Kejelcha crossed the line in a remarkable 56 minutes and 51 seconds at Sunday's Buenos Aires event, running much of the second half of the race alone. The 29-year-old covered the course at an average pace of 2 minutes, 42 seconds per kilometer to lower the existing record by 29 seconds.